So a civil rights attorney is one who specializes either in discrimination cases or violations of constitutional law. For example, if a person has, suffered discrimination in the workplace, either based on their age, their race, their disability, national origin, they would call a civil rights attorney. Every person that contacts my office that has a civil rights case or complaint, they're greeted with respect, because a violation of civil rights is a betrayal of human rights. And it's taking away of a person's dignity and their faith in American values. And so we take that very seriously. And for me, it's restoring that faith in the system, and it's restoring that dignity that really is paramount and at the forefront of what we do at the firm. I feel that every person should be treated equally. And when society or the government takes that right away, those wounds hurt probably more emotionally than even physically. And so because I know that, it's our purpose and our motivation to repair and restore the harms that taking these rights away from people can cause. We all know that the law is written to protect big business, it's written to protect government, and it's certainly written to protect insurance companies. So for example, like the government, its employees and its officials, they've got immunity, meaning you just can't sue them for accidental conduct. You have to establish that the government official did something wrong that they knew was wrong, right? And that's very different from, say, a personal injury case where you're just trying to establish that someone failed to do what a reasonable person would do under the same circumstances. The bar is much higher. So if it were a case of discrimination, what becomes very tough is that major corporations, well, they have all the resources in the world. And so when we go up against one of these companies, we go up against an army of lawyers. And so what we have to do, we have to commit not only all of our resources, our time and our labor, but we have to risk really everything to fight them. So simply put, it's an unfair playing field, but one we're accustomed to playing on. When I was a child, my father was in prison for booking bets. Imagine that. He was taking football bets and he went to prison. So some of my first writing were letters to the Milan prison. And I saw how unfair the system treated him. And I think that probably planted the seed that I was going to do something from a justice standpoint. I don't know if I knew that it was going to be civil rights, so to speak, but I think that sort of governed and fashioned my way towards this practice. Okay. Well, personally, I grew up here in the Detroit area. I went to undergrad at Michigan State University, and then I went to law school at University of Detroit Mercy. Since that time, I now sit on the University of Detroit Alumni Board, and I'm very proud to say that I started a scholarship in my name for civil rights students. The landscape has changed, but it has not changed for the better. The Supreme Court obviously has not disturbed the qualified immunity laws in years. They had a chance a couple of years ago to abolish qualified immunity. They chose not to. They've had challenges since then, and they've chosen not to. While the George Floyd case certainly brought this issue to the forefront, it definitely didn't change the legal landscape and certainly did not make it easier for everyday citizens to bring these cases. Sure, there's always the outliers. There are the Breonna Taylors, there are the George Floyds, there are the Michael Browns. And from the criminal system, we know has failed completely. The officers, they're never charged and they're rarely convicted, less than 1% of the time. The civil arena really is the best place for those cases, and even there, with qualified immunity, 60% of the cases get dismissed. And so it's a struggle and it's a fight, but the landscape has not changed very much. You really do need a lawyer that is experienced, that understands how to plead these cases, how to litigate these cases, to have even a half a chance to win. Years ago, I handled a case for a man in the western side of the state who was shot by a police officer. And the officer accused my client of assaulting him. And we went to a trial in the Western District of Michigan, and we got the highest verdict ever for a non-fatal shooting. So that sort of catapulted me into this area of practice. And then a few years ago, I was hired by the family of Janet Wilson, a 31-year-old African-American female who was mentally ill. And she got into an altercation with a sales clerk at a sunglass store, and she was shot and killed in her car by a Dearborn police officer. Since that time, and currently, I represent families in Michigan, California, and Texas who have lost family members, their loved ones, to police violence, who have been incarcerated in mental hospitals under insanely harsh conditions, which have led to their death. And but I don't want to say that we only take cases that are press-worthy or that are in the media. We handle all cases for any families or persons who have been wronged by the system. And it just so happens that the media pays more attention to these cases, which of course they should, but by no means are the cases that we handle, although notable, the only ones that we do handle.